Imagine living in a country so small that many people can barely find it on a map. Yet for centuries it controlled much of Europe and influenced the destiny of the entire world. An empire surrounded by frozen mountains, luxurious palaces, and bloody wars. A place where some of the greatest musical geniuses were born, but also one of the most dangerous men in human history. Austria is not just a beautiful country filled with snow and castles. Its history is a brutal mixture of power, ambition, betrayal, glory, and destruction. And the most shocking part: behind the elegant streets of Vienna lies a past so intense that it helped trigger 2 world wars. So stay until the end, because the true history of Austria is far darker and more fascinating than most people imagine. Today, when people think about Austria, they usually imagine peaceful landscapes, classical music, chocolate, mountains, and organized cities. But for centuries, Austria was the heart of one of the most powerful empires on earth. An empire so influential that kings, emperors, and entire armies trembled before it. But everything began much smaller than you would expect. More than 1,000 years ago, the region that would become Austria was merely a dangerous frontier territory. Germanic tribes, violent invasions, and endless wars were part of everyday life. The land was constantly disputed because it occupied a strategic position in the center of Europe. Whoever controlled that region would gain access to the heart of the continent itself. And that is exactly what transformed Austria into something enormous. Over time, one family slowly began accumulating power, a dynasty that would change world history forever: the Habsburgs. If there was ever a family that truly understood how to control Europe, it was them. The Habsburgs did not conquer only with swords, they conquered with marriages. Yes. While other kingdoms spilled blood in endless wars, the Habsburgs created an almost genius strategy, marrying their children into the most powerful royal families across Europe, and it worked in terrifying ways. Little by little, they gained control over massive territories. Austria, Hungary, parts of Italy, Spain, and many regions throughout Europe became connected to Habsburg power. The empire kept growing larger and larger, but alongside power came paranoia. Because the bigger the empire became, the bigger its enemies grew. And the Habsburgs lived surrounded by conspiracies, betrayals, and brutal religious wars. Europe was collapsing into violent conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, and Austria became one of the central forces in that struggle. Thousands died. Cities were destroyed. And while ordinary people suffered, the imperial family desperately fought to maintain control. But something even more extraordinary was happening. Vienna was beginning to transform into one of the most important cities in the world. Imagine streets illuminated by luxurious carriages, gigantic palaces, extravagant royal balls, and theaters overflowing with classical music. While many regions of Europe struggled with extreme poverty, Vienna became a symbol of elegance and sophistication. Mozart lived there. Beethoven lived there. Strauss transformed the city into the global capital of music. But behind all that beauty, tension never disappeared, because the Austrian Empire was a ticking time bomb. Different peoples were forced to live under the same government. Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Croats, Italians, Serbs, and many other ethnic groups coexisted inside a deeply unequal system. The empire looked powerful from the outside, but internally it was slowly cracking apart. Then one man appeared who would change everything: Napoleon Bonaparte. The French emperor stormed across Europe like a hurricane. Entire armies were crushed before him. and Austria became one of his greatest targets. The wars against Napoleon were devastating. Austria suffered humiliating defeats. Fear spread throughout the population. Many believed the empire would finally collapse forever. But the Austrians survived. And after Napoleon's defeat, Vienna once again became the political center of Europe. Leaders from across the continent gathered there to reorganize the entire European order. But the real problem continued growing. The peoples inside the empire were tired. They wanted independence. They wanted freedom. And slowly, revolts began erupting throughout different regions. The empire was losing control. Then came one of the most important decisions in Austrian history. Instead of completely destroying the rebellious movements, the rulers created the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a system that divided power between Austrians and Hungarians in a desperate attempt to keep the empire united. For a while, it worked. The new empire became a massive world power. Vienna experienced its golden age. Luxurious cafes, advanced science, monumental architecture, art and wealth created the illusion that Austria would dominate Europe forever. But danger was already growing in the shadows. Nationalism, ethnic hatred, and political tensions were spreading across the continent. Then came the moment that changed the entire world. June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was visiting Sarajevo. The city was tense. Many Serbs hated Austrian control. And hidden among the crowd stood a young man named Gavrilo Princip, armed, nervous, waiting for an opportunity. Then the impossible happened. The Archduke's driver made a wrong turn and stopped directly in front of the assassin. Princip pulled out his gun and fired. Franz Ferdinand died. His wife died beside him. And those gunshots unleashed something nobody could stop. World War I. Millions died. The world descended into absolute chaos. And at the center of it all stood Austria. The empire collapsed rapidly. Hunger, military defeat, and rebellion destroyed the structure the Habsburgs had spent centuries building, and then it was over. The enormous Austro-Hungarian Empire disappeared from the map. Austria, which once ruled much of Europe, became only a small, weakened, humiliated country. But the worst was still coming. A few years later, a man was born in Austria who would once again change world history in horrifying ways. Adolf Hitler. Yes, Hitler was born on Austrian soil. And although he later ruled Germany, his origins were tied to Austria. During the 1930s, Austria suffered deep economic crises, political fear, and social instability. And while the population struggled, Hitler's power in Germany kept growing. Then something shocking happened. In 1938, German troops entered Austria with almost no resistance. The country was annexed into Nazi Germany in an event known as the Anschluss. Many Austrians supported it. Others felt terrified. But the reality was simple. Austria disappeared once again as an independent nation. Then came World War II. Bombs destroyed cities. Thousands died. Austrian Jews were brutally persecuted. And Vienna, once a symbol of music and elegance, became surrounded by fear, destruction, and silence. When the war finally ended, Austria was devastated. The country was divided among the victorious Allied powers, just like Germany. Foreign soldiers controlled different parts of the territory. Many believed Austria would never truly become free again. But slowly, something surprising happened. Austria rebuilt itself. And perhaps because it carried such a heavy past, the country chose a completely different path. Neutrality. Instead of becoming another military power, Austria invested in stability, diplomacy, quality of life, and culture. And it worked. Today, Vienna is considered one of the best cities in the world to live in. Austria became a symbol of safety, organization, and human development. But here is the most fascinating part. Beneath that peaceful appearance, the weight of history still exists. Austrian castles guard the secrets of vanished empires. Elegant streets hide memories of world wars. And Vienna's luxurious palaces continue reminding the world that this small country was once the center of European power. Maybe that is what makes Austria so fascinating. It survived the collapse of empires, survived world wars, survived devastating political crises, and still managed to reinvent itself. Very few countries have done that. Austria's history proves that enormous power does not guarantee eternal survival, because even the greatest empires can fall. But it also reveals something even stronger. Even after destruction, a nation can rise again. Now tell me something. Do you think the Austro-Hungarian Empire could have survived if World War I had never happened? Or was it already doomed to collapse? Comment below because I really want to hear your opinion. And if you enjoy real stories more intense than movies, leave a like and subscribe to the channel because the next videos will reveal historical secrets that changed the world forever.